Hi, how's it going, everybody? My name's Ryan Leigh, and today I'm going to be talking to you about SageMath. So, what is SageMath? SageMath is it's a free and open source mathematics software system, and you can perform all various tasks mathematics related, such as algebra, geometry, calculus, statistics, numerical analysis, linear algebra, graph theory, and many more. SAGE stands for the System of Algebra and Geometry Experimentation, and the credited originator and leader of the SageMath project is William Stein. And right here you can see this is their logo. So SageMath was first released on February 24th of 2005, and as I said before, it is free and open source, meaning anybody can download it and anybody can edit it that they allow. Initial goals were created. We're creating an open source alternative to other mathematical softwares, for example, Magma, MATLAB, Maple, and Mathematica, which these softwares typically most of them have a subscription-based payment. Uh, so it is free and open source software, so it's distributed under the General Public License (GNU), which is widely used for free software license. The SageMath supports research and teaching in algebra, geometry, number theory, graph theory, cryptography, numerical computation, and other related areas. It's distinguished by its strong emphasis on openness, and it's got a strong emphasis on community cooperation and collaboration. And it's built on many existing open source packages that are already available, such as NumPy, SciPy, Matplotlib, SymPy, R, Maxima, GAP, Singular, and many more. And right now, its current version is the 8.6, and it's available on Windows, Mac, Linux, and they also have their online cloud version they can use. It's very handy. So how could you download this? You can go straight to their website, and all versions are available just right there on their website. It's www.sagemath.org. You just simply follow the installation guide. It's really no hassle, and you should be really good to go. They don't really try and make you walk around any corners or anything like that. And they have many links to install videos posts that other people have posted before. Ways, like I said, you can use the SageMath using a notebook graphical interface as well as an interactive command line, very similar to a Python interpreter, and as well as you can also write your own programs, being that it is made from IPython and C++. So you can use SageMath in your own programs, and then you can also use it online with the SageMath cell. It's at sagecell.sagemath.org, or you can simply just go straight to their website, and it's right there for you. So the notebook graphical interface. This picture is horrible, but to run the I'll show you a better picture in a sec. So to run the Sage notebook while Sage is running, you can just simply type notebook, and this will bring up the notebook interface, as well as depending on the version you have. You might just have for instance, on my Windows version, I downloaded. It comes with a notebook interface and a terminal interface. Depending on which one you would like to use, you just click whichever one. But Sage is actually, right now they have two kind of versions. They have like the Sage notebook, like their own notebook, and then they use Jupyter Notebook as well. And right now they're really transitioning to using Jupyter Notebook as their default client instead of their own Sage notebook interface. But it will use either one, kind of depending on which version. Like for instance, on my Mac, it likes to bring up the Sage notebook. I don't know why. And on my Windows, it always brings it up in Jupyter. And here I just have two quick examples of the notebook. You see they have the Sage notebook and they have the Jupyter notebook. And you can do many things in Sage, from simple tasks such as just performing basic algebra like a calculator, all the way to plotting a very detailed 3D graphs, which is actually really one of its higher points that they have. And then And then as you see, I was going to talk about the interactive command line. Of course, the command line is very similar to a Python interpreter, which is very handy if you just want to really just want to do something really quick, in my opinion. But there's also one good thing to note about this interactive shells. Like whenever you're using it, say you wanted to see what's inside your file or your directory, or type a different, use a different or any other Unix command, you can just simply type an exclamation mark before the command, as here's an example right there. To log your input and output as well, you can use the log start command. It's not the same as saving, but using the log start command, you can reload using the load command in future sessions. You start back where you left off. Or, as well, you can also use the save session command to save your input and output for that session, stored into a particular file. And this is just a quick example of the interpreter, which it's in my opinion is my favorite to use, but it does have its drawbacks, of course. As you see right here, you can do many things. Just plots the sine of x and pulls up a PNG image right here, and on the right it uses the interpreter to factor a really large number. And this is very simple, just gets the prime factorization of the number. And the next thing was you can use SageMath in your own programs. So SageMath gives you the ability to write your own code in a separate file, and you can load it using the load command while in Sage. So you could use the use the attach command to attach file to your running session with the .sage files. And then you can also create standalone Python Sage scripts, which can also access C functions to find other files as well using the .spyx files if you do wish to do that. Say you had to make some calculations that would take quite a long time in Python, and you can write them in C++ then and use make a .spyx files to combine them all. SageMath also has support, given that its backend is Python. It supports generally just all Python data types such as lists, tuples, sets, strings, iterators, numbers, and of course numbers, and then a few more of their own such as just like sequences, which are actually very handy. And then you can also define functions as well, create loops, etc. Right here are just a quick examples of the data types as well. Right here at the top you see I have a list followed by a string, then a tuple, and then a set, and then a float, an integer. Just a quick example. And then right here you can see how you can write your own functions inside your programs, and you can use them using import Sage. And you can, for instance, right here in this example, I just use Sage's factorial function itself to get the factorial of a number. And this is a quick example. This is actually the example that they have in their Python or Sage tutorial, which is available online. It's extremely handy. But right here, you can see it prints out the prime factorizations of n. And there's also the online version, which is very handy if you don't want to download anything, and it's actually runs fairly smoothly. But it uses their own SageMath through CoCalc interface, with whom if you have an account, you can simply you can use CoCalc if you have an account with them, or you can just simply use the SageMath cell, which is just right on the homepage of SageMath's website. And this is the example right here I have for the SageMath cell. If you go to the cell, it just brings up this menu right here. It's kind of similar to the interpreter or the notebook interface, but you would just you have to click the evaluate button right here once you have your input right here, and it will print your output right there. And next thing I want to talk about is that Sage has this integrated help system similar to Python that you can use, that is extremely handy if you don't understand maybe some of the syntax that a function has, for example. But if you type a function name followed by a question mark, you can get help on that function. And you can also type help with a parentheses, help with a module name, help on the class, etc. So it's not just solely for functions. You can get it for modules, you can get it for classes. And to exit the help system, it's just type Q, And then since SageMath is open source to display, you can also display the source code for functions, which is actually kind of cool if you just type in two question marks. And then, like I said before, SageMath uses IPython as its front end, so it supports any IPython or Python commands, and features such as like the %bg for running in background command, and then uses jobs to access those commands. This can be very helpful if you have like extremely large computations that take some time. For a quick reference to the IPython and Python type %quick ref. One of the nicest features about SageMath is its ability to plot and display graphs. These graphs as well can be designed to be interactive using the interact, and then Sage can also produce 2D as well as very complex 3D images and even animated plots such as a region plot or a density plot. And there's also an extensive amount of functions to create variations of common graphs, such as a wheel graph. They have all these graphs stored in a large database, and there's just an incredible amount of graphs that really I hadn't even no clue even existed. So you can also create simple graphs as well, directed graphs, graphs with nodes, basically nodes. If you have a syntax error or something goes wrong in SageMath, it simply just throws a Python exception. So Python will typically suggest what raises the exception, for instance, a name error or a value error. And if you're ever having any trouble trying to figure out what you're doing wrong or what your syntax error is, Python does offer an interactive debugger to use it, which you can use the %pdb command, which will toggle the debugger on and off. So when an exception is raised, the debugging process will begin. And then you can, while the debugger is running, you type the question mark for a list of commands to use in the debugger. And some of the long-term goals for Sage were they want it to be useful, they want it to be efficient, it's free, and they want it to be open source, easy to compile. They want everyone to have the ability to cooperate with each other, and they want it to be well documented, extensible, and also they want it to be user-friendly, which it's getting there. And one of the most important thing I want to talk about was the SageMath tutorial, which is available online. It's just right there on their website, and it's probably the most helpful bit of information you can use to read to figure out how to use SageMath. And it comes in an online and in a PDF form as well. I highly recommend it though if you wish to use SageMath. It's only a little over 100 pages, so it's not too much of a long read, and it should only take you a couple of hours. So some of the downfalls of Sage is that currently there's only a couple thousand people who probably actually use Sage, so not too many people using it. So Sage has a big problem with the lack of money as well, given that it's free, and compared to like the others that have a subscription. And then Sage is also new compared to the others as well, and therefore it has some bugs that it's still working on, but still does its job. And Sage is also a little bit slower than the other math softwares as well, such as Magma and Mathematica, but those are not free. And also, so given that it is open source, if you'd like to help on the Sage, they are always looking for anyone who wishes to help collaborate on the project itself. And they have a long list of Sage-related projects waiting to be finished on their website. And if you would like more information on that, you just check out the Sage Developers Guide. So that's it for my video, guys, for my presentation on SageMath. And right here, I just want to show you a couple of things that I've done in SageMath myself, just to show you what you can really do. As you can see, you can just do basic algebra. You can do some for loops and print in whatever way you like. And to set to variables, sometimes you might need to say x equals var of x, something like that, y equals var of y, theta equals var of theta. And then you can use a solve equation, one of my favorite ones. You can solve, and it will tell you for this equation that x is going to equal -1. And you can also do this for very complicated equations, as you can see, and right here. And then you can also set equations, you see like this, and then you can solve for these equations. And then also we have my next favorite. We have integrals and differential equate. And then right here you can make matrices. And then you can also, this is just a graph I've made myself. It's just to show one of the small features you can use of SageMath. Thanks for listening, and hope you have a nice day.